So Democrats will hold 2020's first presidential debate tonight in Iowa, with less than 3 weeks left until voters make their picks in the state's caucus. 6 candidates will take the stage tonight. It is the smallest group of candidates to appear in any debate so far. 2 of those contenders, Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, have been longtime allies. But for the first time, they're going after each other in public. Ed O'Keefe is in Des Moines with the latest.
At issue is a conversation that Senators Sanders and Warren had in late 2018. The 2 like-minded New England liberals have been close buddies in Washington and have had plenty of opportunities over the past year to attack each other. Their campaigns have refused to do so until now.
So yes, I'm with Bernie on Medicare for all.
The partnership on display at previous debates might now be a thing of the past. In his statement last night, Warren described how she and Sanders met in December 2018 to talk about topics including gender and the presidential race. I thought a woman could win, Warren's statement reads. Sanders, she says, disagreed. Sanders called earlier reports of his comments ludicrous, and they contradict what he has said publicly for years.
In my view, a woman could be elected president of the United States.
Tensions first flared over the weekend when Politico reported on a Sanders campaign memo that told volunteers to say that Warren only appeals to wealthier voters and won't be able to expand the base of the Democratic Party. Sanders denied the reports.
I have never said a negative word about Elizabeth Warren, who is a friend of mine.
And Warren shot back.
I hope Bernie reconsiders and turns his campaign in a different direction.
Here in Iowa, polls continue to show a close race.
This is a real toss-up.
Multiple surveys put former Vice President Joe Biden, Sanders, and
Iowa, I think you're going to make me the next president of the United States.
Former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg in a statistical tie. Those numbers helped force New Jersey Senator Cory Booker out of the race.
I can't wait to get back on the campaign trail and campaign as hard as I can for whoever is the eventual nominee.
Booker also cited a lack of fundraising in the impending impeachment trial as reasons why he had to get out. He was one of nearly 30 candidates in the largest, most diverse field of presidential contenders ever. Just 1 dozen remain, and just 6 appear on stage tonight here in Des Moines. All of the candidates on stage are white. Anne-Marie and Vlad?
All right, Ed, thanks very much. Caitlin Huey-Burns is in Des Moines with more on what we can expect. All right, Caitlin, so let's start with Senators Bernie Sanders and Senator Elizabeth Warren. As we heard in Ed's piece, the 2 progressive candidates are at the center of this feud despite having a non-aggression pact over the years and even up until this very moment. How can we expect this to impact the debate?
Well, I certainly think they'll be asked about it tonight, given that news, and given that they have had this, informal pact for a while now. Throughout this campaign, every time we would talk to the Sanders campaign or the Warren campaign about each other, they would say they're friends, that they, respect each other, and they had nothing, bad to say about one another. Well, those gloves, I think we can safely say, are off now. And why is it coming now? We have the debate tonight. We're about 20 days away from the Iowa caucus, and we're seeing polling here that shows a wide open race. This really could be anybody's guess at this point when you talk to the campaigns, when you talk to Democratic strategists here. And we've also seen in our CBS News Battleground Tracker that Elizabeth Warren has been losing support among more liberal voters of the party to Bernie Sanders. So we're seeing them come to a clash at this point of time because they're also competing for very similar voters. Now, we'll see kind of how they handle this tonight and how much Elizabeth Warren wants to take this. You now have other people weighing in on this feud, former candidates like Kirsten Gillibrand and others talking about how gender is a factor in this race. We should also note that there are only 3 women in this race, only 2 on the debate stage tomorrow night. And when you look at the top tier, Elizabeth Warren is the only woman kind of leading in the leadership position in this race. So does the issue of gender come up again tonight, and does it start to shape the rest of this campaign?
So the issues that usually do come up, though, are the ones that people are talking about, those kitchen table issues like health care or the economy. And then often there's another issue, whatever the hot topic in the news cycle currently. And what we're talking about now are the tensions between the U.S. and Iran on the fallout from that. So how big of a factor do you think foreign policy will be in tonight's debate?
I think that we can expect it to be a factor. We really haven't seen foreign policy come up on the campaign trail until about the past couple of weeks. And it's interesting, we were at a town hall last night in Ames, Iowa for Pete Buttigieg, and he was actually asked about how he would handle tensions in Iran. So this is an issue that is coming up among voters. And it's interesting to kind of compare that to some other issues that have been in the news. Impeachment, for example, has been kind of overshadowing this race, but we really don't hear voters talking about it, and they're not really, listing it as a top concern. I think the issue with Iran hits a little bit differently, especially when you look at these early states, Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, where you have military families, where you have more of a concern among people. It might affect them more directly when we're talking about Iran. So I would expect this to be an issue, especially as this race has kind of morphed into more of an audition for commander-in-chief, something that we hadn't really seen so far in this cycle.
Caitlin, let me ask you about former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg. He is losing ground in Iowa. That's according to a new poll from the Des Moines Register. As you know, he placed third in this most recent poll after having led the candidate field in November. What's going on there?
Right, and then we see in our poll that it is a heated three-way tie, really, in the state of Iowa. And so I think what these campaigns are doing are they're trying to be here as much as they can. And now Pete Buttigieg, while he had fallen in that poll, could have a way to make up some ground in these next couple of weeks, because he is not going to have to go back to Washington for that impeachment trial. So he is going to be on the ground here for the next several days. He has a very packed schedule, and he's trying to take advantage of the timing in this race that has his rivals like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders having to go back to Washington for the impeachment trial. So look for that as well. He's been kind of campaigning as a more moderate figure in this race, talking about unity, something that has some appeal among candidates. There's also some concern with his candidacy, though, that even if he makes it out of Iowa with a strong finish, can he compete in places like South Carolina and Nevada, the more diverse states, especially as he's not doing well among African-American voters, which of course is a key constituency.
All right, Caitlin, I know it's chilly out there, so get inside, get warm. We'll speak to you a little later. Thanks, Caitlin.
Good to see you guys. Thanks so much.
All right, so for more on this, let's bring in CBS News political contributors Antjuan Seawright and Leslie Sanchez. Antjuan is a Democratic strategist, and Leslie is a Republican strategist. Thank you very much, guys.
Hey.
All right, so Antjuan, I'm going to start with you. Here we are. We have the smallest people on the debate stage, so each candidate really has an opportunity to stand out and also sort of flesh out their policies. How are they approaching this? Are they thinking, here's an opportunity to stand out? Are they thinking, I have to show that I can beat President Trump? Are they simply focused on the caucuses moving forward?
I think you're going to see a mixed bag of strategy and delivery tonight. I spent yesterday afternoon and this morning talking to several camps who will be on the debate stage. And I think the one continued message is, let's get back to talking about the things that matter to voters and not things that are politically sexy to the political bubble or to the media. When we get away from talking about bread and butter issues, corner of the nightstand issues, we do not do well collectively as Democrats. So I think you'll see a real effort and focus to get back to that point, but also look for candidates to do what Iowans want them to do. And let's talk about issues that are important to Iowa. Look for particularly some of the higher tier candidates to really put the political shoe polish on the shoes about issues and how to speak to it in such a way that Iowans will feel good about it. And so I suspect that will be the approach tonight. However, as we know, approach does not end up being how the day tends to run.
Right.
So, Leslie, the two major issues facing President Trump currently right now are the upcoming impeachment trial, obviously, and the tensions with Iran. As a Republican, when you look at this current crop of Democrats, who do you see as being able to, A, project that they are going to be strong when it comes to foreign policy, but also to step back from some of the issues that have plagued this president, including issues of accountability, transparency, and allegations of corruption?
You know, it's interesting. When you talk specifically about allegations of corruption, something's broken with the system, women candidates tend to perform better because they're not the traditional candidate. For many voters, they're still not seen that way. It would be minority candidates, certainly, but in this case, particularly women. So I think women are the ones that people vote in when they want people to have consensus and kind of clear out the decks of any type of corruption. traditionally. If you go back to even polling for Hillary Clinton back when she was running for Senate, a lot of the favorables she had in that particular race was somebody who could kind of shake up a New York system. You know, for whatever opinion you have of Hillary Clinton one way or the other, it was some interesting data that we saw that's been consistent for probably, you know, the last 20 years. So I find that part interesting. With respect to Trump, you're going to need, remember, this is a contest of leadership style, not necessarily policy style. So you're going to look for that kind of strong, charismatic voice that's commanding, can show that they can deal with the tensions, not only domestically but internationally. And for that reason, somebody like Joe Biden has all of the favorables in that sense. He's going to have the experience. He's going to be able to leverage that, and then this may be one where he actually performs very well.
And as the intensity of the moment, the Democratic moment increases, I think you're going to see the candidates take a more laser focus on making the individual case why they should win the night, but also win the weeks coming ahead. Because while a lot of people are focused on the debate and what it means for Iowa, you have candidates who are also going to take this time to make the case to a broader audience in New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina of making the argument of electability. The number one thing on the hearts and minds of voters, particularly the political concrete of this party, African-American voters, is who can take on Donald Trump. Look for that to be a continued theme from a messaging standpoint tonight. And going into tonight, I think you've seen the race change in such a way with Cory Booker dropping out. Mayor Pete picked up a big endorsement with the first African-American mayor of a very diverse city in Iowa. Look for that to have some impact on how he fares, but also look for the Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren messaging battle and disagreement pick up tonight in such a way that we have not seen before in a battle of the progressive wing of this party.
That handicap may be very strong consistently, particularly a problem for Bernie Sanders. This is not the first time he's had problems in terms of negative press, negative allegations, dealing with Democratic women. He had that sexual assault issue where you had campaign staffers in 2016 complain about that. And he wasn't rushing to take accountability for his entire campaign, right? He kind of delayed, and that pregnant pause, so to speak, is a problem. And he did it again on the charges of Elizabeth Warren. There's hundreds of people in the campaign. You can't just say, you know, what they're doing individually. The buck stops with the commander-in-chief, and nobody's going to give him a pass on that.
Antjuan, you mentioned Booker dropping out. So now, though the field is still diverse, the people who made the cut to get on the debate stage is not. No candidates of color on the debate stage. Cory Booker was on CBS this morning. He was asked about what that means for the Democratic Party. Here's what he had to say.
We are a better nation when we bring hidden figures together with white male astronauts. That's how we defy gravity and go to the moon. And the Democratic Party, which represents the true rainbow coalitions of America, has got to do a better job of getting more candidates running at all levels, supporting a system that doesn't benefit big money, but really big values. What are the values of our party?
All right, so how are we to assess this? You know, the Democratic Party is diverse, but clearly not enough people felt that the candidates of color had the ability to rise to the level where they could compete with the president.
I think it's so important to keep in mind the word diversity means different things for different people. That's number one. And number two, I think coming into this race, people underestimated the posture of where voters were going to line up. And I think people downplayed or did not anticipate the strength, the depth, and the width that Joe Biden has among African-American voters. And I think people make the assumption, one, that black voters are monolithic, two, that you have to look like me to be able to articulate my issues, or that I trust you to go and represent my issues. And I think, if anything, everyone should learn from this race is that you do not have to look like me in order for me to trust you on the issues. And I think Joe Biden's strength with support among African-American voters clearly demonstrates this.
But we've talked about this, and so I will try to bring it up every time we talk because I think it's interesting. Could it also be that African-American voters don't necessarily value that experience with regards to foreign policy or even access to the Oval Office that the vice president had under Barack Obama, but that they are so worried about losing this election to Donald Trump that they see the only viable candidate who can can beat Trump is Vice President Biden, even if they may agree with some of the progressive ideas of Senator Bernie Sanders.
That's what I was wondering. Because it's less about the issues and more about who's going to beat Trump. Yeah.
Well, consistently, black voters have said the #1 issue for them is beating Donald Trump. But then the second thing, this is proven to be a trust election. So you can want to beat Donald Trump, but you have to trust the candidate that you choose to be your #1 horse to ride as the person to do that. And while beating Donald Trump may be the top issue, they also had to make a second decision of who you think can best do that and represent our issues, quality of life issues that will move the ball for generations where the ball has been stuck on the field in so many regards. And I think that is why Joe Biden has done well, because this is a trust, authenticity, genuineness, reliability type election, and people underestimated that.
Really interesting.
Yeah, it is. Antjuan, Leslie, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, guys, as always.
So CBSN will have live coverage before and after tonight's debate. Join us at 8:30 p.m. Eastern as our team of correspondents and contributors get you set up for the 7th primary debate.